Chang'e, in other words, Zhang Zime, a native of Taiyuan in Shaanxi province, traveled with her father to study in Sifang and later moved to Yangzhou, where she lived. Mickey's father has always been involved with Auntie Lin under the Red Bridge. One day, Zhang Zime and her father crossed the Red Bridge and happened to meet Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin repeatedly invited their father and son to the house for tea and talks. When I got home, a woman stood by and gave birth beautifully. Mrs. Lin said, "Your husband is gentle and smooth. He is like a big girl. He is blessed. If you don't want to give up." "What if you give up my daughter to Lang?" Zhang Wang laughs, urging his son to give Mrs. Lin a gift, saying, "Your word is worth 1,000 gold pieces." Ms. Lin lived alone. And suddenly the woman came to her home to speak of her loneliness. Mrs. Lin asked her name and said it was Chang'e. Mrs. Lam loved her and left her behind. In fact, she was using Chang'e as a miracle. At the time, Zhang was just 14 years old, and upon seeing Chang'e, she rejoiced that her father must get engaged to a matchmaker. But when she came back, his father seemed to forget about it. The fire in Monaco's heart was so intense that she told her mother about it. It was a joke with poor woman. She didn't know how much gold she was going to sell her daughter. How could it be so easy to say, her father said. In the next year, both of Zhang's parents died. However, Zhang Zime still can't forget her love for Chang'e. As soon as she finishes her service, she asked someone to propose to Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin was not at first happy, and Ms. Soko enraged. "I've never had an easy time bending my back to others in my life. Why does your wife value my sincerity for nothing? If you break your old engagement, you'll have to give me back my kindness," Mrs. Lin said. "It was a joke with your father before, maybe there was. But there was no official word. And then they forgot. Now that you're telling me, I want to keep my daughter and marry the prince. I look so good in her grooming every day. I'm hoping I'll get a girl, but today I'll only give you half price. Is that okay?" Ms. Monaco had difficulty figuring it out herself, so she put the matter aside. At the time, a widow happened to live in the western neighborhood. She has a daughter who's just old enough to be married. Her nickname is Toppy. Soko met her once in a while, elegantly graceful. Not beneath Chang'e, Komi adores her and approaches her every time she gives a gift. They've been familiar with each other for a long time, and they often see each other off. The two wanted to talk, and they had no chance. One night, I went over the wall to borrow the fire. Songzi grabbed her so happily that they did their thing, and agreed to marry her best, saying that her brother had not returned from business. Since then, they've been in contact with each other as soon as they had the chance, but they've kept their distance. One day, Zhang Zime happened to pass by the Red Bridge and saw Chang'e standing in the door, and Zhang Zime quickly walked past. Chang'e looks at him, beckons him, and Soko stands on her feet. Then Chang'e beckons him, and he enters the door of his home. Chang'e scolded Zomi with a backup promise, and Zomi explained why. Chang'e enters the house and takes the gold and hands it to Zhang. "I thought I'd never get along with you again, and I'm engaged to someone else," Ms. Soko said. "Now, if I accept your gold and marry you as my wife, I will fail others, and if I accept your gold and don't marry you, I will fail your kindness. So, this gold I'm afraid to accept." Chang'e stayed for a long time and said, "Your engagement, and I know it, will never happen. Even if it does, I don't blame you. You've got to get out of here. Mom's coming back." Ms. Monaco, in a hurry and without knowing what to do, took the gold and went home. After one night, I told the truth. When Chang'e is right, Zhang Zime is encouraged to pay attention to her love. Ms. Zongzi was contemplative. She cheered up when Ms. Zongzi said she was willing to be under Chang'e. Immediately send a matchmaker, take the gold and hand it over to Mrs. Lin. The mother has nothing to say, so she hands Chang'e over to Zhang. After Chang'e entered the door, Zhang Xiang told me the opposite. Chang'e smiles and encourages Nathan to be the concubine. Zhang Zime is happy and anxious, but the trouble is not coming for a long time. Chang'e also knows that the trouble is for her own sake, so she goes home for the time being and gives them a chance. Tell Sokomi to steal her sachet when she meets mischief. Soon after, Ms. Monaco was in no hurry to discuss her marriage. When I dissociated myself from the situation and laughed at him, a purple purse appeared under the pressure, and Ms. Soko picked it in the air, suddenly changed her face and said, "You are one with others, two with me. Negative. From now on, cut ties," she explained, stayed, and went. One day, Ms. Zhang passed by her house, which had been leased by another surname, Wu, and said that Diane Bang had been moving away for a long time, unable to see any trace of it and unable to ask. Miss Soko married Chang'e, and her family suddenly grew wealthy. With a loft gallery connecting the streets, Chang'e is happy to play. At one point, they saw a beautiful picture, and Ms. Munico told Chang'e, "I always say that beauty is like your person, and that the world is unrivaled. I just hate that I've never met young Gai Fai or Zhao Faiyan. You want to meet young Gai Fai and Zhao Faiyan? It's not difficult," Chang'e said with a laugh to Zhang Zaimei. So, after taking up the scroll and looking over it, I hurried into the room, dressed myself in mirrors, and learned the lightness of Ms. Zhao's dance, and the lazy intoxication of young Gai Fai. Short, fat and thin. It changes with the way you dance. It's the same soft touch as it looks on the roll. When Chang'e first danced, a maid walked in from the outside, almost unrecognizable, asked her siblings in surprise, and then, with more detail, laugh. "I've got your beautiful stepwife, the beautiful woman of history, in my house," she said. One night, just after falling asleep, a few people broke the door in, and the fire lit the wall. Chang'e got up in a hurry and exclaimed, "The thief has come in." Ms. Munico had just woken up and was trying to shout, and a man pressed a knife into his neck, scaring him from gasping for air. The other man ran away with Chang'e strapped to his back, and the bandits dispersed. That's when Ms. Munako shouted, and the servants gathered to see how the house's precious jewels were soft and intact. Ms. Munico was so distraught that she lost her mind. They went to the government, and the government went after them with an ultimatum, but nothing came of it. Gradually, after 3 or 4 years, Zhang was so bored that he took the opportunity of trying out in the provincial capital and dropped off in Kyoto. After living for 6 months, Chang'e's whereabouts have not been detected. Once, by chance, passing through Yaojia Lane, I met a woman, a beggar with scaly hair and ragged clothes, who was panicking like a beggar. Munico stopped and looked at her closely. She was lying. "Why are you so haggard? Since you've been separated, I've moved south, and my mother has died. I was sold to my own flag by the wicked, humiliated and discouraged, and couldn't bear it." Ms. Munako listened and wept miserably, asking, "Can you redeem it under the banner? It's hard, it costs a lot of money, and there's no way to do it. To tell you the truth, I've had a lot of money in my family for a few years. But I'm a guest here, and I don't have much money in my pocket." Ms. Munako said, "I wouldn't dare say that if I could redeem you by selling your luggage and horses. If the amount of money needed is too large, I'll go home and do it." He was asked to meet at the west side under the bush tomorrow and told to go alone and not to be followed. Munico promised. It's all. The next day, Munico left early, as promised. In the west side, Buddha waited there long ago, wearing a bright cheongsam, very different from what he saw yesterday. "Yesterday, I tried your heart," Munico asked her with a wondrous smile. "Fortunately, the love of my family has not changed. Please come to my humble abode and I will give you a very good thank you." Ms. Munako followed Mr. Daya's path north and came to her home. He was greeted with dishes and wine, and the two laughed abnormally. Munico asked her to come home with her. "I'm too burdensome to go with you, but I know a little about Chang'e." Ms. Munako couldn't wait to ask where Chang'e was. Her whereabouts are erratic, and I don't know where. There's an old Nishiyama, blind, asking her, and I'll tell you. That night, Munico stayed at home. God, show him the way. When Ms. Munico got there, she saw an ancient temple where the surrounding walls had collapsed. There's a thatched house and a pile of bamboo, and old Ni is tinkering with clothes. "I don't care if I see someone," she was greeted by Munico. That's when Laoni looked up and asked what he was going to do. Miss Soko put her name on the paper and then told herself what she had asked for. "I'm a blind 80-year-old in isolation, Where can I find out about beautiful people? I don't really know. I have 2 or 3 relatives who will visit tomorrow night. Or the little girls who will know, Laoni said after Zongzi begged her bitterly come tomorrow night. So Sokomi came out. The next day, Laoni was not at home, and the broken door was locked tightly. After a long wait here, the night is already late, and the moon hangs high in the east sky. Zong Zaimei walks back and forth. There is no way. Chang'e is one of 2 or 3 women seen walking in from afar. Miss Zong was so happy that she suddenly got up and grabbed Chang'e's sleeves. Chang'e said, "A reckless Lang scare me to death. I hate that verbal mischief. And you're torturing me with your son and daughter." Zong sat down with Chang'e, holding her hand, and spoke of the hardships of leaving. Weeping sadly, Chang'e said, "I'm telling you the truth. I'm Chang'e from heaven. And I'm being relegated to the bottom of the line, floating and sinking on earth." When the deadline expired, Toko was taken back to the sky. The reason for this is to deny the king his hope. The old Nikki is for the queen's mother. When I was first accused, I took care of her and stayed, so I had time to visit her. If you let me go, I'll marry you on the upside. Miss Munico kept her head down and wept. Chang'e looked back and said, "The sisters are coming." Song looked around, and Chang'e was gone. She cried so loudly that she didn't want to live in the world anymore. She hung herself. "I feel as if my soul has left my body, and I don't know where to go." Suddenly, Chang'e grabbed her feet and rose from the ground, and then entered the temple, where she was carrying the body out of a tree and pushed on, calling, "Devil's Wolf! Devil's Wolf, Chang'e is here." Munico wakes up from a dream. Later, Chang'e announces, "Being a bitch. I killed Lingjun for my life, and I can't spare her." They went down the hill and laid down a car and went back to their apartment. Zong Zaimei ordered her family to prepare their outfits and return to the west side to thank her husband. But when he got there, the original house completely changed, and Munako returned with a sigh of dismay. Luckily, Chang'e didn't find out. Inside, Chang'e laughs. "Have you seen the joke?" Ms. Munako was stunned. "How can you see the upside down if you want to carry my Chang'e behind your back? Please sit there and she'll be here in a minute." Not long after, suddenly, "I'm on my knees." Chang'e poked a finger at her head and said, "Boss Xiaoyang, it's very harmful. It's quite a clasp, but I hope it's not." Chang'e said, "You want to get away with pushing people into a fire pit. The 11th aunt of Guanyin Palace will marry in a few days. She needs 100 pillows and 100 pairs of shoes. She can come with me and finish it together. Just give it to me, and it will be delivered on time," he says. Respectfully, Chang'e refused, telling Munico, "If you agree, let her go." Gawking at Zong Zaimei, he smiled and didn't say a word. Look at him with anger. Chang'e said yes, begging to go home, and went home. When Miss Zong asked Chang'e about her life and her lineage, she knew she was a fox on the West Hill. Munico bought a car and waited. The next day, when I did, they returned home together. Chang'e returned this time with a heavy-handed demeanor and never jokes lightly with her family on weekdays. Miss Zong forced Chang'e to play the game. She never refused, only secretly encouraged her to do so. It's smart. It's good at flattering men. Chang'e likes to spend the night alone, and whenever Soko wants to spend the night with her, she often replies with physical discomfort. One night, it was 3 more days, and I heard the sound of laughter and eating in the house. Chang'e asked her maid to sneak a peek. The maid came back and didn't say anything, but asked the lady to see for herself. Chang'e lodged in the window and looked in, only to look upside down as if dressed in her own shape. And Soko held her and called Chang'e. Chang'e smiled disdainfully and returned to the room. Beware of sudden headaches, dresses quickly, pulls Zongzi to Chang'e's room, and kneels in the door. "I'm not a doctor or a witch. Where can I be treated? You want to imitate Sissy? It's just kodoing and blaming." Chang'e said, "Okay." He rose from the ground, laughing. "I can make the lady learn the goddess of the world," she whispered to her. Not believing it, Ms. Munico made a bet with Mr. Tudang. Chang'e always sits with her eyes closed every time she crosses her legs. Sneaking a jade bottle into a wicket, on the tea table, I plump my own hair, stand on my side, half-open cherry lips. bare teeth and unblinking my eyes? Munica laughed at her. Chang'e asks her, perversely, what I'm learning is that I'm learning to serve the world. Chang'e smiled and scolded her, prescribing her to be a child and giving herself a gift. When the hair is tied upside down, you go to the ground and for directions, change the shape, turn left and right. The dance style, the feet can wear your ears. Chang'e laughed and kicked her. Raise your head upside down, bite the tip of Chang'e's foot with your mouth, and gently hold it in your teeth. Chang'e is laughing happily, and suddenly feels a bit of lust. From the toes up to the heart, the spring is unbearable. You can't control it. Chang'e quickly settled down and shouted, foxes and foxes. You want to die. You don't want to be confused, scared, quick to talk, on the ground. Chang'e berated her harshly, but the rest of us don't know what happened. Chang'e told Munico she almost made a fool out of being a subservient servant and a foxy woman. If it wasn't for my deep roots, I would have fallen into her trap. Since then, when things have gone wrong, they've taken precautions. Humbled and fearful, I told Munico I love her every move, but it is too much to befuddle her because of the depth of love. If I have other hearts, but I don't dare to have them. I don't have them. Miss Soko told Chang'e that she had changed her attitude, as she had done. However, because of the lack of moderation in their frolicking, Soko was repeatedly discouraged from listening to Soko. And so the small women followed their example and competed for sex. One day, two maids helped a maid, dressed as young Guy-Fi, to get drunk. Two maids make an eye look, and while the maid is drunk and hazy, the two men put their hands on her. And the maid suddenly falls down the steps, falling like a wall. Everyone shouted that the maid who pretended to be Princess Wei-Po, like Princess Wei-Po, died. Everyone's afraid, tell the master, Chang'e said. Appalled trouble broke out. How did I say? Check it out. It's hopeless. Send someone to tell the maid's father. The maid's father, is a man of no virtue, crying.
Alright. This story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.